Greetings, greetings, greetings. Happy new days, beloved, and welcome to the best days of your life. I hope that you are feeling well. I hope that you are feeling mighty. I hope that you are feeling important. I hope that you are feeling love. I hope you are feeling light. I hope you're feeling covered and protected. And I hope that you are feeling like God's favorite child. Welcome to the best days of your life. Today, we are discussing and reading segments of It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. And, yeah, this segment of this chapter is about the family mind and how the family mind is the mind that is passed on to you, and it is up to you to evaluate the family's mind, right? These behaviors and patterns and thoughts that have been passed down to you, these perspectives and ways of life, beliefs that have been given to you. How does that align with what it is that you truly desire and want out of life, right? So we're looking at the alignment of the family mind in your mind, and we're also looking at how do we undo some of those unhealthy thought patterns and just ways of life, right? And we're also looking at active imagination. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to get started with reading chapter 3, segments of chapter 3 from It Didn't Start With You, okay? So here we are. To put things simply, we receive aspects of our grandmother's mothering through our own mother. The traumas our grandmother endured, her pains and sorrows, her difficulties in her childhood, or with our grandfather, the losses of those she loved who died early. These filter to some degree into the mothering she gave to our mother. If we look back another generation, the same would likely be true about the mothering our grandmother received, right? So here, Mark is saying essentially we receive some of the parentings of our great grandparents and grandparents through the parentings of our parent. And here's an example of that, right? Just like my father abandoned me, my father's father abandoned him, right? So we can see the cycle of that very behavior continues. And sometimes, of course, we see the opposite. We see a parent who had an absentee parent, and so they vowed that they would be the present, right? They would be the present involved parent because of their experience, right? So we know that there's opportunities for it to go either way. Just give an example, right? So here we are. It's not only what we inherit from our parents, but also how they were parented that influence how we relate to a partner, how we relate to ourselves, and how we nurture our children. For better or worse, parents tend to pass on the parenting that they themselves received, right? Perfect example of the absent father then going on, the father who experienced not having a father going on to again repeat that cycle of not being a father. And even when we have the situation of a father saying, you know what, I'm gonna be a present father because I didn't have a father. His decision is still impacted by the trauma he experienced, right? So not having a father influenced him to be a father. That same trauma influenced him to attempt to break the cycle, right? So these patterns appear to be hardwired into the brain and begin to be formed before we're even born. Thomas Verney says, from the moment of conception, the experience in the womb shapes the brain and lays the groundwork for personality, emotional temperament, and the power of higher thought. Like a blueprint, these patterns are transmitted more than learned. So, the blueprint of our personality, our emotional temperament, so just our personality in itself, the blueprint for that is more so in our DNA than learned behavior. That's what Thomas Verney is saying. So they're saying your biological makeup tends to outweigh learned behavior. So now we're looking at how significant it is to pass on these type of traumas and depressions and sorrows and just low self-esteem and pains and difficulties, how we pass them on scientifically, how we pass them on biologically in DNA, right? And again, we know that that type of DNA makes up 98% of our overall DNA. Pretty impactful, right? So here, when a mother carries inherited trauma or has experienced a break in the bond with her mother, it can affect the tender bond that forms with her infant, and that bond is more likely to be interrupted. So here we and this also refers to secondary PTSD, right? Experiencing a parent who is enduring PTSD. Why this is so important to note in the Black community is that most trauma goes undiagnosed, most mental health issues go undiagnosed, untreated, and most of us are not receiving counseling nor therapeutic interventions, right? So with the knowing that most people are enduring these these symptoms of depression. However, they're not getting what they need and they're passing on, right, consciously and unconsciously, they're passing on behaviors that are connected to the symptoms of depression, right? So we're literally passing on how to be sad, how to be depressed, how to live in a low vibrational state, okay? Which is very important to note. Why is that important to note? Because this is why we must question the behavior patterns. This is why we must question what we have learned, essentially. This is the reason why most of these behaviors were created because of low vibrational thoughts and just going through so many sad experiences and not recovering emotionally from that, right? So you have slavery, post-slavery, you have segregation, you have racism, you have lynchings, you have the fight for civil rights, you have the fight for education and equal jobs. We just been fighting the whole time, constantly fighting. And so that is literally part of our download, this fight or flight mindset, which doesn't help us to create and cultivate what it is that we truly desire out of life. We're literally living as depressed zombie beings, right? We're really sad as a whole, right? On a general level, when you look at a Black family, you can see so many aspects of trauma. So when we see low rates of marriage, when we see high levels of single parent households, when we see low levels of certain aspects of achievement when it comes to home ownership, just wealth, we can see the trauma even in the levels of heart attacks and heart disease among the Black community. You can see these are direct correlation to depression and anxiety, right? These are direct correlations to the symptoms of PTSD. So on a general level, we have the Black community literally living in a depressed mindset, okay? And this depressed mindset, often the symptoms of it go completely miss, like no one notices, right? So here we are. In order to end the cycle of inherited trauma in my family, ultimately for my own healing, I realized that I needed to heal my relationship with my mother. That's deep, right? And so in your own family, and you're reflecting, what does your relationship look like with your parents? What did your parents' parent relationship look like? How did your grandparents and your parents get along? What is their relationship like? Is it strained? Do you see generationally strained relationships between the mother and the daughter, right? What does that look like in your family? I know in our family we see a lot of um, trauma between the mother and the daughter, right? So here we are. My mother had inherited her mother's stress patterns, and so did I. She would often clutch her chest and complain about feelings of agony in her body. She had body aches and body pains. A lot of us, we experience those certain body aches and body pains. We've heard our grandparents talk about them. We heard our mother complain about them, but not really understanding how those body aches and body pains are directly correlated to emotional trauma. Trauma trapped in the body, right? Creates these pains because stress creates pain, right? Stress creates inflammation in the body. Depression creates inflammation in the body. Okay. I realize now that she was unconsciously reliving the fear and loneliness that rippled through our family. The terror of being separated from the one she needed the most, her mother. I remember as a small child, maybe 5 or 6, feeling so terrified when my mother left the house that I'll enter her bedroom, open the drawer of scarves and nightgowns, and bury my face into them so that I could breathe in her scent. I remember the feeling vaguely that I would never see her again, that her smell would be all that I would have left. As an adult, I shared these memories with my mother, only to learn that she had done the same thing. She had buried her face in her mother's clothes when her mother would leave the house. Do you see that cycle? This here it is. In this family, there was a phobia, a real fear of losing the connection with your mother. And here it is, that phobia had been carried on for at least 3 generations, we know for sure, right? At least 3 generations, we know that that same phobia had been carried on. And here we see that the narrator is expressing to us they're acknowledging the need to heal the mother-child relationship in their family. They have seen the cycle of trauma in that relationship throughout their family. So here it is. They're like, okay, this is where I can start. And this is why it's important to take a step back and analyze your family and see where you are and where it is that you can make the improvement, right? Where it is that you can break the cycle. Okay, so here we go. As my story illustrates, early interruptions to the mother-child bond can be seen long before I was conceived, right? So he was able to go back and see that trauma, right? Okay, so this is another thing I want to look at. The repetition of trauma, right, okay? The repetition of trauma is not always just an original event. In a family in which someone has committed a crime, for example, someone born in a later generation could go on to commit the same crime. Do you see aspects of this in your family? And especially in the African American community, and our statistics would support that we experience family imprisonment quite frequently, to where it's something that is quite normal to us and normal for our kids to experience. You might can see that in your family. Prison is definitely a theme. It's a theme in my family's story. It's a theme in my family's history. And it's also another cycle that needs to be broken. So I think that we're going to conclude there. That was like the main point of chapter 3, seeing and acknowledging where the trauma cycle or the themes of the trauma cycle in your family. And these themes look different, right? It might be single parent household. It might be abuse. It might be neglect of children within the family. It might be unhealthy eating. It might be lack of time management. So there's so many aspects of negative behavior and things that you may witness throughout your family, but you acknowledging these things give you the opportunity to break the cycle. So congratulations. Here's to the best days of your life, beloved.